And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be with you today. The reason for my live stream today, I was going to do this as a video, but I wanted to speak to you directly, and I wanted you to have the opportunity to give feedback on this for what you believe is happening to our children and how you feel about what is happening to our children. So I wanted to update what is going on in our school systems, the education that our children are receiving, and the people who are responsible for giving those lessons to our children. And this is going to impact our entire nation. No matter where you are in the nation, this will affect you. Not necessarily tomorrow, but over the next 10 years, as these children go and become adults and are able to vote, the influence that is happening to them today is going to be seen in the future. So it's very important, and it affects everyone in our nation. And sadly, most of our news media are not telling you what's going on. And I will prove that they are actively not telling you what is going on about your children and how it's going to impact your community, wherever you are in the nation. Now, if this is the first time that you are seeing the program, by the way, we do welcome you and thank you for joining us, and we do long-form political commentary on this channel. In addition, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you from all social media, as long as the internet overlords allow, where you are able to speak to us in chats to add your voice and leave your comments, your tweets. You can even call in at 607-242-1582. And yes, you can comment and call in right now, 607-242-1582. So let me get to what is happening here, okay? And I know people may not see this until later this evening. They may not see this until they get home. I wanted to address it now, and feel free to comment afterwards. But we know that for a while now, there has been a big issue in our nation. We've seen that private schools and public schools have been taking on the idea of critical race theory more and more. It is a progressive ideal, a socialist ideal, that is being introduced into our schools and into our children, even children as young as 8 years old. Now, we've seen also, and it has not been well publicized, that in many of these schools, we have the teachers and the superintendents and the school boards are very aware that what they are doing is actually demonizing children. As you can see here in an article from National Review from April 20th, as they highlight that even in New York City private schools, that we are seeing that children are being demonized and that they are demonizing white people for being born. This is racism. Quite simple and very straightforward. Children are being taught to be racist. They're being taught to be racist against white people, but racism is racism regardless of who that racism is targeting at this moment. Because when you promote racism, it only creates more racism. And that is a problem. And that's something that America was fixing back in the 80s and 90s. And now in the 2000s, 2010, we're seeing a change where critical race theory is being promoted and people are being demonized for the color of their skin. I disagree with that. I believe that's a problem in our school systems and should not be taught to children. You may disagree. You may say, Mike, well, no, it's perfectly fine. That is your right, but I believe we should do better. And it's not just in New York City private schools. It's not just in New York State. This is happening across the country. And we see this a lot. Now, you can go to the Washington Post, as I have here, and you can see on May 3rd, that was this Sunday, they had talked about schools expand racial equity network, which is critical race theory, a progressive ideal, and conservatives are seeing a threat, that this is a problem. This is something that is nationally happening, that schools across the country are working to address systemic racism and inject an anti-racist mindset into the campus life. But as we've seen, that means demonizing white people, which means that it is a racist mindset. And advocates see racial progress, see that this attempt at critical race theory is shaming white teachers and sometimes students for being part of an oppressive system, which doesn't exist. I mean, Tim Scott made it very clear himself in his Republican address to the joint session of Congress. America is not a racist nation. And the response from the progressive ideologues was to say that he's Uncle Tim, referencing Uncle Tom, that they were using racist slurs against him. And Twitter was perfectly fine with that for 12 hours, even as the backlash mounted. America isn't racist, but there are ideologies that live and thrive under racism, and those ideologues, that progressive socialist ideology, is being given to our children. And we know this is happening because, as I showed you, at the Binghamton City School District Board of Education meeting on April 19th of this year, there was a massive outcry by the public when the school systems went out and actually were teaching kids to be more racist. They were anti-cop, anti-white books being taught to children at 8 years of age. Now, the proponents of this idea say, well, children should know about America being racist. I disagree with America being racist, but that's their point of view. And they're saying, well, we must teach children these political ideologies, these same children who don't have a vocabulary. That we're talking about elementary school children who don't know how to do math and don't know comprehension of the words that are being used. Hell, I know there's adults that don't know what critical race theory means. Gender identity politics, they don't know the definition of that. And we're trying to teach 8-year-olds about this? No, we're trying to program 8-year-olds so that they don't know any different. And we saw that, as I said, on April 20th, when the Binghamton April 19th on the Binghamton School Board, where parents spoke up and said, don't do this to our children. Do not politicize our children. Do not use our children as some kind of political tool to give quasi-political organizations power in elections. That's not the job of a school board. Something that is being repeated and said throughout this entire nation. No matter where you are listening to this, it's happening. So let me say this. We decided that there was something that needed to be done. Because on April 20th, we provided a video, a live stream that covered what was being said by Black Lives Matter, the organization, and Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, the organization known as PLOT, in our local community in the Southern Tier in Binghamton, New York, where they were taking advantage of individuals who had smoked marijuana, had used a mind-altering drug, and they took advantage of these people to then use them to get ballots. This is how they get people onto the school board. This is how they get people onto elections. They get them high, they make them they allow them to be high, and they use those individuals in that state where they cannot, by New York state law, give consent and use them to get their political advantage. That is a problem. When you use anyone without their consent, that is a problem. That is wrong. That's what the whole Me Too movement is about. That someone does not give consent, or they are giving consent because they are under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or because someone's position of power is causing them to give consent against their will. That is expressly wrong in the nation and in New York State. And that needs to be challenged. That needs to be questioned. And when we see organizations, quasi-political organizations, which is what BLM and what PLOT are, quasi-political organizations, they are there for political power. When these organizations are using these questionable means, we need to speak up. And I did. In fact, as a private citizen, a member of the Binghamton School District, I spoke up, and you may recall we put out this email where we sent in a challenge on April 28th to the Binghamton School Board, challenging one of the candidates, a Cecile Hopkins, and her petitions to get onto the school board, as she was one of the advocates seen in video, in video, and more importantly, live stream, advocating and using the inability of people to give consent, people who are on mind-altering substances and could not give their consent to try and get onto the school board so that they could teach critical race theory, which we know is demonizing people for the color of their skin. Now, you may think this is a great thing or a bad thing. What I can tell you is this challenge is groundbreaking. We've spoken to several lawyers about this. We have spoken to the Broome County Board of Education. We have spoken to the Binghamton School District schools, and we have asked about this. Our challenge is groundbreaking. This is new law may potentially come from this challenge, and it is important. It is affecting our children, all of them. So I would ask you, what was the response then from the local news media? How did they respond to this? Well, the response from the local news media was, we sent out this letter, which you see on the screen right now. And we asked, and we reached out to every local news media station, all of the major news media stations, and said, as a citizen, hey, look at this. This story is important. It is about our children. It is about our schools. It is about who is on the school board and what our children will be taught for the next 10 years until they become adults. Parents are concerned about this. Parents are paying attention to this. You need to speak up. Cover this story. We sent this out on April 28th. And as of today, not one news media station has even asked the question, what's going on? Not one news media station has said, we'll look into this. Not one news media station has said, hey, that's interesting. They don't want to tell the public. They don't want to tell you what's going on. They don't want you to know that someone is saying, I will stand up for our children. I will stand up for our education system. And I am challenging and on a groundbreaking legal status to say, let's protect our children. The news media does not want to do it because it involves BLM, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, the progressive movement and socialism, and they are afraid to say anything against these organizations. They do not want to touch this because they're more afraid of them than protecting our children, more afraid of these groups than letting you know what's going on. That is my opinion of it. You may disagree. So, what does that result in? The challenge was made, and the public was being informed. And thank you, Dow. Folks, as I said, you can respond to this on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, all social media. You can do it live now, or you can do it after the program. That's perfectly fine. You can call in at 607-242-1582 right now. I do realize it's the middle of the day, but it's important. Parents need to know about this and need to be able to understand what's going on. But what did the news media say? So the challenge was made on April 28th. As I am showing it to you on the screen right now, this is all information that is public and available for the public. It is based on an election and petition system. So no one is being doxxed. Sonia Brown is a member. This is public information. She is a member she is the secretary to the superintendent and clerk to the Board of Education for the Binghamton City School District. This is the business address of the school district. I am not doxing anyone. The response from the school district is that there was not enough information in the challenge that was made. There weren't enough details for the challenge. Again, I go back to the challenge. I am citing live stream video, which has exact minutes, time, minutes and seconds in this video, this live stream that could not be edited, that is evidence of exactly what I was speaking about. But they said that's not enough proof. Quoting New York State law, as I did in the challenge, is not proof enough. So that's fine. What we did then is we asked for, and we spoke to the board again on May 3rd. And we asked them for the petitions specifically. And then on May 3rd, we directly updated our challenge. And we have challenged 62 of 89 petition signatures, which would remove this candidate, which happens to be Cecil Hopkins, from the school board election because of this and many other reasons of invalid forms, invalid dates, incorrect addresses, invalid addresses, and the inability of individuals to consent due to intoxication from mind-altering psychoactive drugs. Now, you may say to me, well, Mike, how is this important? If you have individuals who will use whatever means they wish, they will use everything in their means to win. This is about winning. This is about power. This is about power over your children, our children in our community, and something that we are seeing in New York City, we're seeing in California, we're seeing it across this nation, that our children are being programmed. They are being indoctrinated. They are being taught racism and racist ideology, and they are being taught that that should be a good thing. And our teachers are backing it up. And many of the teachers, even if they don't want to back it up, are being forced to do so by our school boards. So I am making that challenge, and I have made that challenge at this moment on May 4th at 1:19 p.m. At this moment, there has been no response from the Board of Elections, from the school board, from the schools themselves on this challenge. This is likely going to go to court. This is likely going to create new law on the basis of the challenge that we have made. But more important than any of that is the fact that this is your children. This is their education. This is the way they are going to grow up. Dal has mentioned he's surprised that YouTube actually pushed through the channel. No, they've been blocking this. And if you're watching, trying to watch this live, you're probably noticing that there is a delay intermittently. That's not from our signal. This is coming from the internet overlords because they don't like the subject matter. Because I am putting in front of you the reality that the local news media, the national news media regularly avoid telling you about. They do not want to address critical race theory and children. They don't want you to know that schools are indoctrinating our children, teaching them to hate the police, teaching them to hate individuals of certain skin colors, and it doesn't matter what skin color that is because it is racist by definition. This is what our children are being taught. This is what is at risk in this election for the school board across the nation. You have the right as an individual to make a challenge. You have the right as an individual to decide who is going to teach our children. And I brought that up before when I had spoken on April 29th, saying, who will teach our children? And I brought up this challenge and said, you need to be aware that this is happening. Not a lot of people notice that. Not a lot of people are paying attention because the local news media, your major news stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, their affiliates, Spectrum News, they are not telling you this. They will not take this story. The local, you're listening to news talk stations like WNBF, will not address this. They have been told about it. I know that there are individuals who have spoken to me after the fact, and they have also requested individually to these news stations, these news organizations, and said, address this subject. look at the challenge and tell the public that there is something that they need to be involved in, that they need to be aware of because their children are affected. I'm not saying that you have to agree with me. I'm not saying that Cecile Hopkins will not get on the ballot. I'm not saying that she will not win the election. She may or she may not. But what I am saying is that parents should be fully aware of both the goal, the tactics, and the consequences of what is happening in our school boards. That a group of individuals who are there for political power, who have an agenda, who have a program they want to indoctrinate our children with, that's important to know. And to know that these people are seeking to get power, running in elections, saying, hey, this is what we're going to do to your kids, and you should vote for us for it. That should trouble people. That someone would use voters against their consent, taking advantage of them, and they are willing to do that. What are they willing to do to your children who are defenseless and innocent? Now, again, you may disagree, and more power to you. You can chat like you're seeing Dal has done on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on DLive, on social media, or you can call in at 607-242-1582, or you can comment after the live stream in the comments, because we do look at them all, and let us know, hey, you agree, or you think it's important, or you think it's not important. Maybe you defend Plot, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, and the progressive socialist left, and say, hey, they should teach children to hate one another, to discriminate against each other on the basis of skin color. Maybe you think that's what our kids need. Maybe you think that's what America should do. I disagree. I think that's completely racist, and I believe that hurts people. I think it ultimately hurts everyone. I don't think that's what America is about. But if you do, please explain to me why you do. If you think we should have people on the school board who will determine the lesson plan and tell our kids, no, racism is good if you happen to be in power, if you happen to be popular, if you want to subjugate other people, if you want you want to take their stuff, redistribute it, and get free stuff. If you want them to be taught that, and that will become the future of America, what we teach our kids today in 10 years will become our future. If that's the future you want for your kids, then please tell me why. But if you think that this should be covered, and I'm not even saying that it should be me covering it, please understand, we sent this message to the local, and Dal, I do see your comment. I will get to it in 1 second. This was sent to every news media station. We're talking about Fox, CBS, NBC, ABC. We sent this out to Spectrum News. We've sent this to the local talk station, WNBF. We've had other people send it to these news stations. I invite you, ask those news stations to investigate this story. Ask Press Connects, which we sent to the local newspaper. We've sent it to them, and we ask you, send it to all of these organizations and tell them, hey, follow this, cover this, tell us what is happening to our school children. I invite every single member of elected office, Mayor Rich David, Mayor of Binghamton. I ask State Senator Fred Akshar. I ask Assemblywoman Donna Lopardo. I ask Broome County Executive Jason Garnar. Some of those individuals are Republicans. Some of them are Democrats. I am asking them all to address this issue. Should our schools teach critical race theory, which is inherently racist? Should we have our school board led by individuals who believe in critical race theory, who believe in racism, placing one race and one group of people above another group of people merely for the color of their skin, because it gives them political power? Do these elected officials support this or deny this? Let them address this. Let's get the news media to talk about this and let people know before May 18th so that they can make an informed vote. Dal has said, we have to be laser focused on these local elections. Everyone is so focused on federal politics that changes made at the state and local level are going to rip apart the foundations. And that's what I'm talking about. It may be the example in the southern tier of New York State, in Broome County, the city of Binghamton. That's the example where I have taken a stand because that is where my election is. And I am saying that this should not happen to our children. But I guarantee you, if you are in Shenango County, if you happen to be in Chicago, if you're in Illinois, if you're in Iowa, if you're in Texas, if you're in California, you name the state, you name the city, you name the locality, I guarantee you that there are more and more these socialist progressive ideologues who are pushing this critical race theory, this ideology of racism and hate and punishment to people for merely being born. This is a national issue that is affecting everyone on a local level. It is addressing you. And I'm not telling you to, well, Mike's got it right. No Soundbites Allowed has the only answer on this, and you must listen to us. What we're asking you is, look at both sides. Consider what is happening to our children. And we're demanding of the news media that we keep sending them this story and keep asking them to follow this up, to inform the public. We cannot reach millions of people on this program at this time. I wish we could. Please subscribe. Maybe one day we will. Please comment and like and share this because maybe one day we will. But at this moment, I don't know that this is going to reach 1 million people. I don't know that this is going to reach 100,000 people. It should, because hundreds of thousands of people are being affected. Hundreds of thousands of children are being affected. And if there is anything that we owe our children as adults, as a society, it's to make sure that they are being taught the building blocks of a secure and strong mind and nation. Dow says, teach the kids a racist future, increase suffering, creates friction, chaos, violence, depopulation, resource sequestration, and population control. And I cannot say that's wrong. I agree with that. I think it's very important. And that's why I'm on right now speaking with you. You don't have to agree with me. I have not asked anyone to agree with the challenge that I have placed forward. I'm not telling you that you have to agree with what I think is best for our children. I'm not saying that. That's not the purpose of this channel. We are saying, are you aware of what is happening and what will be the consequences? Are you aware of what people are saying and what they are doing to take control and to have power over you and your children and your choices for your children? They are superimposing their will and their ideas in place of yours. And I believe that you need to know that, and you need to make your voice heard, not just in the election, but beforehand. And it is the obligation of the news media to tell you this, to let you know the truth. Now, links for all the information I have just spoken about will be available online. You will be able to see this for yourself in full. You will be able to read the entire challenge and all responses that have been made so far as of the time of this live stream, so that you will be able to make a decision for yourself and for the future of your children and for the well-being of your children. And we are open and again invite every member of the press, ABC, CBS, NBC, Spectrum News, Press Connects, WNBF, any news media organization in this nation. We are happy to provide them all of the information that we have provided to the public. We will be happy to give it to them. We will answer any question of any organized news media organization, WSKG, NPR. We will speak to them all and as much as they want, answering any question they have, to follow this up and to present to the public what is going on. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this isn't important to people. Maybe some people don't care. Maybe some people say, well, I don't have children, so it doesn't matter. I don't have children. It does matter. It matters a lot because our future, my nieces, my nephews, my friends' kids, and their families are all affected by this. Our future is affected by this. The next 10 years is affected by this. Our future tomorrow is affected by this. This has an impact on our jobs and our livelihood and the laws that get passed in our nation. This is important to everyone, whether you have kids or not. And if you're not paying attention, if you don't know what's going on, then mistakes will be made and they will cost us. I mean, imagine for a second, if you will, and I want to go back to the April 20th article, April 20th article from National Review. Can you imagine, and I know I'm going on this one thought, because George Davison, the head of Grace Church School in Manhattan, told one of his teachers that he feel that the critical race theory makes white students, quote, feel less than for nothing that they are personally responsible for. Think about that. Children are being taught in schools, not just private schools, public schools as well, and by individuals like Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, which is also known as PLOT, and BLM, the organization. They're being taught in Citizen Action, the organization, they're teaching kids that some of you are less than, that you are less than someone else because you have a certain skin color. Can you imagine that? Let's change this. It's not, let's think about this. Can you imagine if teachers were saying kids who are black or brown skin, Mexicans, Asians, that they are less than white people because of the color of their skin? That's what was being taught in the 1950s. We had riots. We had national protests. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X stepped up and said, that is wrong. We spoke up and said, let's not do that. Racism is wrong. And as a nation, we improved. Well, here it is in 2021. And we have people who are saying, we need to teach kids that someone is less than another person because of the color of their skin. And we need to teach that to 8-year-olds. We need to teach them to hate people merely because of the job that they have. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think that promotes a better nation? Or is that going to cause problems? Is that going to poison the minds of our youth? And when we have a school board that if it were to be controlled and if the elections go unchallenged, that these individuals of these organizations have advocated for teaching your children exactly that they want to have power. And they're willing to use your kids to do it. They're willing to use any means possible, including denying people consent to do so. Dow mentions, do you think that the lack of action on the part of the media is the number of voices maybe being too few? I don't know. Well, I don't think it's too few because the local news media, and you can see this in every county, in every state in the nation, let me rephrase that, and the majority of them have had meetings just like the school board meeting that occurred in the Southern Tier on April 19th. That same kind of discussion is happening across our nation. So they can't say it's not a lot of people. There were hours. Let me go back to this. There were hours of conversations of people, parents calling in saying for and against talking about what our children should be taught, whether they should be taught to hate police, whether they should be taught to hate someone on the basis of their skin color. There were people who were for it. There were people who were against it. There were hundreds of people who spoke about this. And to say that there aren't enough people, if the news media wants to say, well, no one's paying attention to that story, yes, they are. And even more people want to know about it. And it's the job of the news media to not pick the most popular story, but to tell you the most important story, to tell you what is happening and what will affect our community at the local, the state, and the federal level. It's not a popularity contest. That's what entertainment is for. If you don't want to cover a movie and review a movie, that's perfectly fine. That's entertainment. We're talking about our children's lives. We're talking about the framework and the foundation of our community, local, state, and federal. So the excuse that, oh, well, not a lot of people are talking about this, that's because you're not telling them in the major news media. The major news media doesn't want you to know. You should know. This is a public interest. This is news that is affecting lives, the most vulnerable lives in our society, children, 8-year-olds. Yeah, this is important. And that's why I'm speaking about this. And that's why I'm speaking up. Even if no one else will. Even if this doesn't, and again, it's not about popularity. This video may get 0, 4, 5, 100, I don't care. It doesn't matter how many times it's seen, how many times it's shared, because it needs to be said. It needs to be discussed. It needs to be brought to people's attention. Maybe there are people who say, Mike, I've seen your challenge, and you know what? I want to support, they want to support Cecile Hopkins. Maybe they want to support BLM and plot and the progressive ideology, the critical race theory, the teaching of racism to our children. Maybe you agree with that. Fantastic. I'm not telling you not to, but I am telling you that there's a lot of people who don't, and they believe in the challenges that are there, and they need to know you're not alone. That you aren't the only one who wants to protect our children from this kind of things. That you believe that America is bigger and better than that. And to quote Tim Scott, the senator, America is not a racist nation. But we have people who use racism as a tool, a political tool, and they will use children as well. And that is a problem. You don't have to agree with me, but I think it's important. And I definitely think it's a conversation we must have. And you can disagree. In fact, if you agree or you disagree, please share this video. Please ask the local news station to cover this. And I don't mean cover what's happening in Binghamton, New York. I mean, if you happen to be in Charlottesville, you happen to be in Indianapolis, you happen to be in Iowa or Portland or Colorado, Boulder, wherever, go to your local newspaper and say, are you covering the local school board election? Are you telling people whether or not critical race theory is on that election, that candidates are supporting that idea, that they are trying to indoctrinate our children? Go to your local news media and say, if you're not telling us about this, cover this story. Tell the public about this and the consequences that come from this. Ask your community, wherever it is in America, do you want to teach our children racism? To hate, to consider a whole group of people less than other people on the basis of their skin color. I don't care which skin color you want to pick. It's racist no matter which one you interject. Do you want your kids to be taught that? Do you think that's the way America should be? Because the news media should be covering that, and that should be a discussion in every community in America. And Americans should decide. You should get out and vote. And if you allow organizations, and they happen to be, and the people who support this ideology, critical race theory, are progressives and socialists. And if you believe in this, you will elect them. And they will teach our kids racism. And they will teach our kids critical race theory. And they will gain power. And I really, I cry for America if that is the case, if that happens. Because we're not going back to the 1950s. We're going back to the 1600s. We'll destroy our nation. And that's why I implore you, share this with people. Let people know. I've reached you at lunchtime. You'll have all day to think about it. If you watch this later this evening, please think about this. Reach out to your local news station. Reach out to the local news media. Make a comment here and reach out to them and say, hey, cover this story. Let's talk about this. Let's get more details, more information. Let's tell people the truth so that they can make informed decisions when it comes to an election and so that our children are protected. I keep mentioning that because it is the reason why I'm having this conversation with you. And I'm inviting you, whatever your beliefs, to leave your comments, to tell me why you think I am right or wrong, or whether this should or should not be an important discussion for our communities. And I, again, open this up to the news media. They wanted me to ask me a question. If they want any and all of the evidence and documentation that I have, I will be happy to provide it to them, just as I have to the entire public, because I believe this is an important issue. Let me leave it at that, because I've said it 3 times now, I believe. I think I've made my case of why I think this is important. Whether you agree with it or not is up to you. What you wish to do with it is up to you. But I do say, if you have found this to be informative, if you have found this to be of interest, like and share this video. And again, the links for all of the information will be at the bottom of the video so that you can read this for yourself and make your own decisions. And please, most of all, subscribe so that more people are able to join in this expression of free speech. Like Dal has done, you too can be able to make your comments, to be involved, and let people know what you think. And that makes America the greatest nation in the world, because we all get to do that. And that's why one of the reasons why America is not a racist nation. Let's keep it that way. I thank you, and I hope you'll be well, and I look